A missing child, a bomb disguised as a Christmas gift, a civil rights era Klan murderer brought to justice. Join David Ridgen as he and victims' family members track down leads, speak to suspects, and search for answers in the CBC's hit cold case podcast, Someone Knows Something. Subscribe to SKS wherever you get your podcasts.
This is a CBC podcast.
Tanse, Anine, Boujou, hello and welcome. This is Unreserved on CBC Radio 1. I'm Rosanna Dearchild. Well, the COVID-19 pandemic has Canadians spending more time than ever indoors. While working from home, I, for one, have reacquainted myself with some of my favorite books, music, dance moves, and my house has never been cleaner. The scent of pine sol really takes me back to when I was a wee dear child. And even though life seems to have slowed down, hints of spring are beginning to pop up all across the country. This week on Unreserved, from outdoor survival classes being offered online to finding hints of nature in Canada's biggest city, we're finding signs of hope in signs of spring.
I believe we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the old camp up on top of the ridge. You can see off in the distance the trap line way back there. It's just me out here with Sushi today. She's off camera getting ready to bark at the geese again. Apparently she doesn't like geese. That or she wants me to go hunting. Wrong time of year, but oh well. Just got a fire lit. I'm gonna get some water boiling for part of our demo for today.
The fire crackling, the wood splitting, that's the sound of Caleb Musgrave out on the land. COVID-19 canceled his outdoor survival classes, so he's offering them on Facebook Live instead. Caleb is Anishinaabe from Hiawatha First Nation and the owner of the outdoor survival school, Canadian Bushcraft. Hello, Caleb.
Anine.
So how has Canadian Bushcraft, the Facebook Live version, been going?
It's going really good. I'm very surprised by the turnout of people. We're a very small school here in Ontario. And so we usually teach about 50 workshops a year, but honestly, it's usually just the same students that come out just because they love what we do. But on social media, we've had a presence for about a decade now, but the influx of people that have been coming from all over trying to join in and ask questions and participate has been amazing. It's been incredible.
Yeah.
And we're doing it for free, so I think that helps with a lot of people. They can come in and join with their families. Their kids can watch it because we keep it family friendly. Mm-hmm. Minus the occasional nick or scratch or injury because it's live. That's the big downside to it is when you're on live, you can't really guarantee control of every scenario. So a good example was the other day I was trying to make a birch bark basket and the bark wasn't working with me. Whereas if I had done it for a YouTube video, I could have edited it, gone and get some better bark, done all this and that. But in front of 75 people, I had to just persevere.
For sure.
So what type of things have you taught so far?
We've taught everything from what kind of tools to take in the woods and how to use them safely, like a saw, an axe, a knife, fire starting tools. We've done a workshop or a session on making rope from bark from the trees. We've done, yesterday we did birch bark baskets and talking about the sugar bush before contact. So talking about clay pottery versus hot rocks for boiling sap into syrup and sugar, making the tools you need. And just a ton of different things that we've covered. We also went over wild plants this past week because we're starting to see the leeks growing and we're starting to see the dandelions coming up and the coltsfoots coming up. And so we've been showing people the plants and the animals and the trees that we use and just showing people whatever we have available at that time. So it's kind of almost a localvore, seasonal kind of treat for everybody.
Wow, you really know some stuff. So why are you teaching these classes online?
Well, there's a few reasons. First and foremost, I just hate the idea of kids being cooped up at home because there's nothing else to do. Like, I grew up always playing in the bush, always getting I would sneak away from school. My mom's a teacher; she hates that part of the story, but I would sneak away from school just to go and play in the town park and the town ponds and just play around in the bush. And after school, I was in the bush. On weekends, I was in the bush. And I still played video games and whatnot. I still did things that other kids did. But I had a happier, healthier lifestyle because of being in the woods. And because there's nothing stopping us from going in the woods right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason to stop from going out in your backyard or going out in the back 40. But we should be doing it safe, and we should be doing it happy and healthy. So any way I can encourage that. And finally, like, it's to also, in a lot of ways, business wise, is to keep us relevant. We're a small company. We're a small business. I've honestly, we've started changing our entire business model because of COVID-19. We're getting ready. We are hoping to put up we're going to be getting our podcast on Friday. We're going to start recording and editing and all that. And we're getting whole new videos set up. We set up a Patreon this past week because we're like, well, how can we strengthen our business while still giving as much as we can to the community? We're not huge. We have some social media presence, but we're not, the next big name in survival TV or something like that. We're not going to be the next Les Stroud anytime soon. And so to be able to keep a business like this alive, we got to let people know that we exist. So I think this is an easy way for us to be able to manage that and use the modern way to keep us on the market.
Right. Now, you've been out on the land for most of your life, as you've mentioned, usually with students, friends, family. What's it like going out there alone during this time of physical distancing?
It's kind of eerie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more eerie when I have to go to our neighboring city, Peterborough, for supplies, because sometimes you feel like I Am Legend is going on.
You even have the dog.
Me and the dog just wandering around looking for supplies and trying to avoid mannequins. But when it comes down to out in the woods, it's actually kind of weird because all these kids are free from school. All these parents are free from school. So even though I'm in the woods alone, just down the road from my camp, a Winnebago showed up and there's somebody just camping out there. And they've been out there for about 2 weeks now. I have no idea who it is because I'm trying to keep social distancing, but I can see them. We wave at each other as I drive into my camp. But I'm seeing kids walking down trails, and then as soon as they see me, they turn around and leave because, again, social distancing. But there's people out, and it's kind of beautiful to me. It's as much as I'm worried about my grandmother who's got immunocompromised situation going on, it's kind of at the same time beautiful to see how many people are getting out. And I'm trying to find that silver lining there.
So teaching through live stream is much different, of course, than teaching the teaching that you're used to. What are the biggest challenges and differences that you've noticed?
Lighting is an amazing thing you got to figure out very well. When we're teaching a course in person, I don't have to worry about is the sun bleeding out my image. So when I'm trying to demonstrate something to people, like how to twist a piece of bark into cord, I'll start getting all these comments of, we can't see that, it's too bright. And I'm like, what are they talking about? And I look at the camera and I'm like, realize I can't even see me. I mean, I'm a very light-skinned Ojibwe, so now that we got sunlight, oh man, I just turned to Snow White. But basically trying to fiddle around with that and try to figure out exactly to make sure the right angle so people can see what I'm trying to demonstrate. It's challenging. In person, I just say, look at this, and people can look at that. On camera, I have to make sure it can see what I'm trying to point out. So luckily we've had about 9 years of experience with YouTube trying to get videos out to the public. So it's been kind of helpful, but that's with a lens and tripod and all this stuff. I'm just going out with a monopod and my phone making these live videos. And the other challenge is if something goes wrong, I can't edit that out. If I cut my finger to the bone on a saw when I'm trying to cut in a wedge spot on my axe handle, I'm going to be bleeding on camera. Like, I'm going to have to get off camera and bandage that up and get back on camera and explain to people why I was missing for a minute and a half. And they can learn that, like, I've been doing this since I was 8 years old and I'm 31 now. I've been working in the bush in one form or another, teaching and learning everything from survival skills to building birch bark canoes. And if I can still screw up, I think that can help a lot of other people realize that you don't have to be a perfectionist out in the bush and you can still get by. But also it's kind of a beautiful kind of part of the whole conversation of, okay, he just screwed up. And we all saw that, and he's just accepting it and moving forward. It's kind of a beautiful form of the challenge and the art of bushcraft.
Kind of like life, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's live, which is alive, which is life. It's beautiful and challenging, and that's exactly what life is. Yeah.
So when you say you're getting a lot of people, how many people would you say are tuning in or however you do that on Facebook Live every time you're on?
I think our highest number to date was just under 100 people, and they were coming from places like New York State, England, Western Canada, Eastern Canada, Northern Canada, and the United States, and I believe one person from Mexico.
Wow.
So we save the videos on our page so people can come back and watch later. And we come back and suddenly there's 1,200 views in less than 24 hours.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Caleb.
Miigwech for listening.
That was Caleb Musgrave, owner of Canadian Bushcraft, an outdoor survival school based in Ontario. Still ahead, invasive plant species are nothing new, but is there a new way to think about them?
Where I'm from, like in a lot of Indigenous communities, we regard all plants and animals in our territories as our family, and that we're part of a broader kinship network or family network that includes not just humans, but other beings as well, all other beings. So if a new plant or animal moves into your home place, how do you fit it in? Is it a relative? Is it an invader? Do we have responsibilities for these new plants and animals?
More on that story in just a few minutes, but first. The Northwest Territories announced its first case of COVID-19 in mid-March, but they were preparing before the virus even made it to the north. Norman Yakalaya, the Dene National Chief, was seeking guidance on how to lead the Dene through this pandemic. So he asked for help.
2 weeks ago when I was in Delaney, I sat with an elder and I did my protocol. And I asked the elder, what do we need to do as Dene people with the coming of the coronavirus into Canada? And the elder said to me straight in the eyes, he said, go to the land. That's what our ancestors have been saying, go to the land. That's what we got to do as Dene, as Aboriginal people. There are some people that need to stay in the community for essential services. Some are elder people who need to be in the community. Some are people who are not doing so well, need to be in the community. But the ones who can go to the land, help them get them on the land.
Since then, Yakalaya has been advocating for just that. He's asked all levels of government to get people in the Northwest Territories back onto the land. And last week, the federal government offered some financial help. They provided the Northwest Territories with $2.6 million to go directly to families planning on going onto the land so they can buy food, firewood, gas, and other supplies. Yakalaya says it doesn't matter whether it's 1 kilometer from their community or 30, as long as they get out there. Sheena Snow, who's from Colville Lake, plans on getting out there with her family for a couple of weeks.
We figure it's safer to be out on the land in our cabin away from the community because then there's just, us and our family out on the land. We'll be very isolated away from the community.
Snow says she plans on staying out there for weeks at a time, only returning when absolutely necessary. She says being out in the bush, she's not going to need much.
We have everything out there we need. And there's lots of food out on the land, like there's caribou, there's fish, there's everything we need. And our kids love it out on the land. So our plan is just to go out there, and it's warming up right now, so it's just better to be safe and also just enjoy it out on the land.
Yakalaya says the Dene have been here before, and now with financial support, they will thrive out on the land.
That's where they're the best at. They'll eat off the wild animals. They'll pick their own medicine. At one time, Dene lived on the land. Government took them off the land by policies and by programs and put us in communities. Now, we're asking now government, to support our people, put us back on the land. Government needs to really seriously consider that. This is the survival of a nation, and we're going to do our best.
And according to Yakalaya, that's a real positive for the Dene and all Indigenous people who are able to get back to the land.
So there's a silver lining in this coronavirus is to, get us back to where we come from, and that's our land. And that's what we want to see. We now want to go back to land to where we were and where our values and our culture and our medicine is at.
That was Norman Yakalaya and Sheena Snow. Thanks to CBC North's Danielle D'Entremont for sharing that story with us. This is Unreserved on CBC Radio 1, Sirius XM 169, and Native Voice 1. I'm Rosanna Deerchild. Many of us are spending more time indoors than usual, but you might be looking out your window and noticing the buds coming up, shots of green pushing through the ground after a long winter, leaves on the branches of trees, or depending on where you are in the country, flowers starting to bloom. My next guest pays closer attention to the changing seasons than most. Alan Colley is a nature guide, a very special kind of nature guide. He leads nature walks in the city, and he thinks connecting with nature can help us through challenging times. Alan is Anishinaabe, and he's the founder of Toronto Aboriginal Eco Tours. Alan, welcome.
Ani, how are you?
I'm well. So where am I reaching you from? I think I hear outdoor noises.
Yes. I'm currently right now just down by Lake Ontario. The city, in partnership with the Mississaugas, have developed a new park down here on the waterfront, which is a great place to get out and to connect.
And can you describe what you're seeing for our audience who might be a little jealous of you right now?
Yeah, it's a beautiful sunny day. The geese are out. You can hear the songs of the red-winged blackbirds. You know, if you look closely at the water and you walk along that shoreline, you can see those pike are beginning to shoal up and beginning to get on their spawning grounds. And it's really a beautiful day out today.
A fair better sight than my closet that I'm broadcasting from. But we got to do what we got to do to bring the masses radio, Alan.
That's it.
So when I think of Toronto, I think of skyscrapers, I think of bustling people everywhere. I don't think of necessarily animal tracks and rivers. And I think it's safe to say that many people don't think of nature when they think of Toronto. What do you want people to notice about nature in the city?
Well, Toronto is this really magical spot for me, myself. And, I've done a lot of traveling. I went out west and I've seen those beautiful mountains and that ocean shoreline. But here in the city, most often people see Toronto, they see the hustle and bustle. But in a lot of little pockets across the city, you really get a great chance to connect with nature. And so even where I am right now, I can see the CN Tower from where I'm sitting. But if I look over to my right and I watch the shoreline, I can see mink running along the shoreline in the rocks, as they're searching for crayfish and a bite to eat. There's so much that's right here within the city. And so for individuals, looking to connect, it's just finding that green spot on the map and saying, hey, let's go check it out.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're the founder of Toronto Aboriginal Eco Tours. Tell me about your tours. Why did you start them?
For me, growing up, I grew up in foster care and children's aid. And, there was always this idea that, we're going camping or we're going out into nature. And, it was always this big drive to leave the city and, that nature wasn't in the city. But, as a young person growing up, for me, I connected with all the rivers and the valleys and the streams and the lake that we have here. For me, it was like, nature's right here. We don't have to go 3 hours away to identify that this is nature. We need to be able to open our eyes and see that we have these brothering relations right here within the city. And that, those streams and those rivers host such diversity of relationships between the water and the trees and the birds and the plants that really, for me, it was like the wilderness nature is right here. And if we can't see it in the city, then what's going to be different from up north? For me, it was how do you provide that experience for people that feel like they're trapped in this city, but yet want to connect with creation? And for me, it was just like Toronto is widespread. We have the Humber River, the Rouge, the Don. We have Highland Creek, Etobicoke Creek. We have so many different valleys and river streams that are in the city that there's such a variety of wildlife and connections to be made that for me, it was just like, we got to do it here in the city.
The snow has melted in Toronto and people there are stepping into spring. What do you think of when you think of spring?
Oh, for me, spring, I know that like spring is here when I start seeing those fiddleheads. when I start seeing those fiddleheads pop out of the ground. The leeks are just beginning to start peaking. And as well, one of those other things, like, when we look at our moon system, for our traditional calendar, we have 13 months in a year. And so we're just into our sucker moon now. And so, going down to the river with the kids with the little worm on a hook, has an opportunity to catch a fish that has a mouth like a sucker, really. It has no teeth or anything like that. So very kid friendly. You won't get spiked like if you catch a sunfish. And so it's those little indicators that you look for, as well as hearing the songbirds. And just as well, I've noticed recently is the squirrels. The squirrels have really been starting to gather a lot more foliage to bring to their drays as they're getting ready for those new ones to come in the next month or so.
So, Alan, we're in the midst of a global pandemic right now, and many people are feeling stressed and scared and isolated. How do you think connecting with nature can be helpful during this time?
Well, I think a lot of people have to realize is just how strong they really are and how much power they have. As individuals, I think so much as society bears down on us that pretty much everybody has that stress and that anxiety. But right now, when you get outside in the springtime, there's really an opportunity for everybody to look at the cracks in the cement or the asphalt, or maybe right in your walkway. But if you look down, you'll see that little tiny plants are breaking their way through. They have all this concrete and all this asphalt that is bearing down on them, which is pretty much all the stresses that a lot of us are going through, but yet they're still growing. And so for all of us, it's looking right now in that springtime, and remember for ourselves that as well, that things can be hard and things can be tough, but as well, it's a new opportunity to grow.
That's so poetic and beautiful. Are you sure you're not a poet?
No. Thank you. Maybe I'll quit my job and start writing poetry.
Oh, there's no money in poetry, Alan. There's none. Sorry to tell you.
Oh.
And so what are you looking forward to after the pandemic is over, about, leading groups on nature walks?
Yeah, for me, it's really getting those young ones out into creation. And I think right now, so many people are just so trapped inside. They're on their devices, whether it's a computer or cell phone or whatnot. For all those kids that are inside right now, I really look forward to the summer, where it's almost like they've been so stuck to technology that when they come outside, it's going to be that new exciting time for them again. Mm-hmm. And I think for everybody as well. I think so many people right now, as if we're talking from our closets, it's an opportunity to really look outside and say, well, this year, how much more are you going to enjoy it? Realizing that the opportunity that we have to be around, to connect with all those beings, and just take a moment just to look and to see. And I think one of the things for those people getting out is, instead of just looking and seeing, stop for a minute and try to look beyond. Mm-hmm. Try and see beneath the water. Try and see what's in the tree, what's in the forest, because there's so much more. Like, even if you take a moment and you sit down on wherever you are, if you sit down anywhere, whether it's grass or in a forest or whatnot, if you look, mm-hmm. you'll begin to notice, and you'll see all those other beings that are around, and they're doing their thing. They're just working really hard to make sure that, for generations to come, they really are going to have a great opportunity.
Well, thank you, Alan. That's a beautiful message.
Thank you. English.
Alan Colley is the founder of Toronto Aboriginal Eco Tours. Ginger mint, chocolate mint, and Labrador tea. Those are just a few of the delicious flavors of teas that Keoki White Duck from Kitigan-Zibi harvests at his farm in Chelsea, Quebec. Last summer, White Duck entered a Dragon's Den-style pitch session and won. He used his prize money to buy a chunk of land to expand his business, Keo Teas. With the arrival of spring, White Duck will soon be starting his garden for this year's batch of teas. Last summer, CBC's Kate Tenenhouse went to White Duck's farm when he was harvesting his herbs.
My name is Keoki White Duck. I am the owner of Mittagoman Agriculture. We're in Chelsea, Quebec right now in one of my gardens where I grow a lot of my herbs for our tea. So I got into gardening back when I was 15, where I skipped a rugby game one day, and my dad, unimpressed about me missing one of my games, made me work outside in the garden all day. And we got to talking about planting seeds and soil and whatnot, and one thing led to another, and he brought me to the store. I bought a pack of cucumbers, a pack of watermelons, and a pack of string beans. And I sowed my first seeds that year and been sowing seeds ever since. So I first started making tea about 4 years ago, where I grew one single bed of mint. And then that fall, I brought them inside, dried them out, and packaged them. And I ended up selling about $200 worth of tea that winter right before Christmas, and had a bunch to tea to drink of my own. I love mint tea. And yeah, it was then people suggested, hey, maybe you can do this as a business, and doing the tea thing ever since. The actual tea plant is a plant called Camellia sinensis, and that's where your green tea, your black tea, your orange pekoe, Earl Grey, it all comes from that plant. Unfortunately, we can't grow that plant in this climate. There's one place in Canada that does it commercially, and it's on Vancouver Island, where it's a lot warmer. So here I just actually use herbs to make all my teas. So this mint bed right here is actually the bed that started it all. 4 years ago I planted 9 different kinds of mint right here. As you can see, they're all grown together right now. We have some chocolate mint, some peppermint, some apple mint all together, some strawberry mint in there. This mint right here is one of my personal favorites, and probably one of our best sellers is KOT. It's called ginger mint. Is basically a mint that has sort of a ginger flavor to it. This bed right here is spearmint. A lot of these different kinds of mints that I have here are actually all derived from spearmint. Even peppermint itself was actually hybridized between watercress mint and spearmint, and that's how we got peppermint. To know when it's the right time to harvest a plant, I'm looking for the height of the plant. For mints, you want them to be, at least a foot tall before you start harvesting them. Once they're ready to harvest, you cut them down, and then you hang them upside down to dry them. This helps the oil slip back into the leaves, which then after you will pluck and make your tea with. All right, so yeah, here we have some peppermint that we just hung up. We're going to let that dry here for about 7 to 14 days. On this side, we have some stinging nettle that I harvested about 2 weeks ago, and by feeling it, you can tell it's dry and it's ready to be taken down and used. So the powwow pitch competition was a competition at the Solstice Powwow, where it was an elevator pitch competition. So you have 3 minutes to pitch your business and say why you deserve to have the grand prize, which was $5,000. I think a big part of why I won that prize was how well my business is doing. I've been selling out of tea each year, and I have a very big focus on being good to the earth, being environmentally friendly packaging. This garden is actually considered a pollinator garden for bees and butterflies. I try to be as kind to the earth as I can with doing the least amount of damage. As you can see, you'll see in this garden that's actually full of weeds, and that's not just laziness. It's also helping out the critters and the bees and the butterflies and any other part of this ecosystem that helps it work.
That was Keoki White Duck, the founder of Keo Tea. If you want more information on it, find it at our website at cbc.ca/unreserved. For all you gardeners and plant lovers out there itching to get your hands in the dirt, let me ask you this. What happens when a plant or animal arrives somewhere new, somewhere it has never lived before? Scientists often call them invasive or non-native species. That's one way to think of these flora and fauna, but there are other ways to look at these species from an indigenous perspective. That's what Nicholas Rio is doing. He's an assistant professor of Native American and Environmental Studies at Dartmouth College in New Hampshire. And he's also a citizen of the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians in Michigan. For years, he's studied Indigenous knowledge and ecological stewardship, including the diverse reactions to so-called invasive species. We've reached Nicholas Rayo at Dartmouth College. Hello, Nicholas. Welcome.
Thank you.
To start with, let's talk about those terms, non-native and invasive. What do these words usually refer to?
Well, it depends on the context. So they've been applied to these plant and animal communities, or what in a lot of indigenous nation contexts we refer to as plant and animal nations. And so within conservation biology and within sort of the broader conservation and land management community, we see people talking about introduced plants and animals, or plants and animals that move outside of their historic territories or range, as quote-unquote invasive, as non-native. Until very recently, I never thought much about that or found it to be in any way problematic. But more recently, I've just started to rethink that a little bit and start to see this sort of native, non-native binary as applied to plant and animal nations as a bit arbitrary.
I really like that, plant and animal nations. How are you reevaluating those terms, native, non-native, and invasive, in this research project?
We're doing a couple of things. One is that I'm working with my home tribal community. So I'm from the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians, based out of Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. So I'm working with my home community and some neighboring Anishinaabe communities. And we're really trying to think about what might different stewardship approaches look like to various invasive species. In particular, we're looking at new aquatic plants that have shown up in our wetlands. And so that work is trying to very intentionally use the best of indigenous knowledge and the best of Western science and have that inform our approach to responding to these plants. So that's sort of on the one hand. On the other hand, I'm working on more of an ethnographical project where I'm just talking with as many people from the communities as I can, how they see these new plants and animals sort of fitting into their worlds. Where I'm from, like in a lot of indigenous communities, we regard all plants and animals in our territories as our family, and that we're part of a broader kinship network or family network that includes not just humans, but other beings as well, all other beings. So if a new plant or animal moves into your home place, how do you fit it in? Is it a relative? Is it an invader? Do we have responsibilities for these new plants and animals? And what are you finding? What are Indigenous knowledge keepers and people that you're speaking to telling you about what your responsibility is for these new arrivals? There's many perspectives. Even within one small community, there's many perspectives about how we relate to these new plants and animals. And some of it's species specific. So one plant or animal might feel more invasive than others to particular individuals. The responses that we've gotten have been very diverse. And so I think that's important in and of itself. But in terms of responsibilities, like one thing that keeps coming up, especially talking to elders and talking to traditional medicine practitioners also, is this idea of it being our responsibility to figure out why these plants and animals are here. So we've been focusing our work most recently on new plants that have moved into the territories. And we have old Anishinaabe teachings that say that all plants have multiple purposes, and they can help us in multiple ways. And so the responsibility that folks are pointing out is that it's our responsibility to figure out what that connection looks like. So why are they here? Are they trying to teach us something? Are they trying to give us something? My collaborators are working with a area tribal college to try to figure out, there's this invasive plant that's proliferating in the area.
And which plants are you referring to?
Oh, yeah. So there's two main ones that have been the focus. And one is a species of perennial grass called Phragmites. It's a really tall grass that when it gets into certain wetlands, it can really proliferate. And then another is a species of cattail, and we've always had cattails in our wetlands, and they're actually really important plants and very useful in a lot of different ways. But there's a new species of cattail that behaves a bit differently, and it can kind of take over wetlands. So they're harvesting the plant materials and trying to figure out ways to use it. I've been involved in some work trying to figure out how we can incorporate these new plants into our food system. and trying different recipes and that sort of thing. But then these other collaborators have been trying to see if we can we heat our homes with these plants? Can we mix the plant material with fish waste, because we have a lot of commercial fishermen, and create viable compost products in various different applications?
Wow. And so what are you finding? Are you finding that it has multiple uses, or
we're finding that
too early to tell?
It's too early to tell. There's not like this is clearly here to heat our homes. It's not quite that clear cut yet. But
darn.
There's been some right. But the compost seems to have a lot of promise.
That sounds so fascinating. Like you wouldn't even think that. Hey, let's see what happens when we do this.
A lot of families up in northern Michigan, where I'm from, have sort of stopped harvesting cattail. Some still do, a lot don't. And so we're trying to kind of re-engage that and teach young people about the value of cattails, and then try to get them into these places where this new species has shown up and see if they'll start utilizing it.
Mm-hmm. Can you give me an example of maybe another non-native or invasive species that has found a purpose that could be found maybe commonly?
Examples that I can think of aren't really from home so much as from like Western Canada and Alaska. There have been plant species that have berries, so maybe they're like related to raspberries or blackberries and that sort of family of plants that have turned up that, the mainstream conservation community regards them as sort of a problematic invasive species, because they tend to kind of be aggressive and take over space within natural areas. But a lot of indigenous communities have seen these berries as just a welcome addition to the food system. Berries, they taste good. They work in their jams. They work in their other recipes. And so people are out there harvesting them.
They got good jam.
Mm-hmm.
If you could put it on bannock, it's good.
That's right.
Now, you mentioned that you've been, your work takes you to a number of different indigenous territories and communities, but where has this work been focused?
So my work on introduced species has mostly been in the Great Lakes region, but broadly speaking, so U.S. and Canada and across different states and provinces. Then also I did some survey work where my colleagues and I had noticed that, and some of my students and I had noticed that, despite the fact that indigenous peoples are doing tons of work responding to introduced species, and some of it very innovative work, it's really not reported in the literature, the academic literature. So we did a survey just including U.S. and Canada and got it out to as many tribal and First Nation and other indigenous communities as we could.
Wow, that's amazing. Are there other ways you're trying to expand that information further out?
I'm interested in doing some stuff outside of North America as well, but not not just moving outside of North America, but doing some comparative work. All these plants and animals, they originated somewhere. Where are those species really important to another group of people, and how can they be sort of guides in our process of making sense of how to fit the new plant into our network of kin?
So why is that important? Why is it important to reflect these diverse points of view within the academic literature?
I think it's really critical because the non-Indigenous broader conservation community and the field of ecology within sort of Western scientific traditions, they talk about plant and animal communities as entities that are separate from humans. So human connections to plant and animal communities are oftentimes seen in the context of threats or impacts. And I think that if we root our approaches to stewardship in kinship to the land, that it influences our work in some really important ways. So just to give one example, for instance, we often see the conservation community taking sort of a gated or fortressed approach to protecting quote-unquote natural areas from invasive species. And so we try to keep people out to minimize accidental transport of invasive species like seeds and whatnot into these natural areas. But an approach that's rooted in kinship would say that we need people to spend more time in these places in order to foster deep, meaningful relationships with the land.
Mm-hmm. Rooted in kinship. I like what you did there. I see what you did there. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you.
Nicholas Rayo is an assistant professor of Native American and Environmental Studies at Dartmouth College in New Hampshire. He's also a citizen of the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians in Michigan. We have a piece on our website that goes into much greater detail on this topic and also has some pretty amazing illustrations of some of the plants. If you'd like to check it out, head over to cbc.ca/unreserved. That's it for this week's episode of Unreserved. We'll be back in this radio space next week for more community, culture, and conversation. This episode was produced by Zoe Tennant, Stephanie Cram, Kyle Musica, and Anna Lazowski. I'm your favorite cousin, Rosanna Deerchild, coming at you from Winnipeg in Treaty 1 territory. Thank you for listening to Unreserved on CBC Radio 1. I go say...
For more CBC podcasts, go to cbc.ca/podcasts.